mortise and tenon joint was one of those technological achievements like the wheel or fire. It completely changed the society in which we live. Before mortise and tenons, woodworking joinery was mostly pieces of wood that were actually sewn or lashed together with leather thongs. There wasn't any real strength to those types of joints. But in about 3000 BC, the Egyptians were the first ones that we know of to start using mortise and tenon joints. And when that happened, things just exploded. You could build large buildings from wood. You could build furniture. You could build sailing ships, wagons that were capable of traveling thousands of miles. As I said, completely changed the world in which we live in. And it's such a deceptively simple joint. All it is I'll take one apart here for you. All it is, the mortises, is just a cavity in one of the adjoining pieces of wood, and then the tenon is just whittled down to where it fits the cavity. And yet, when it's put together like this and glued or pegged, it's as strong as if the tree actually grew together. It will resist all sorts of stress once it's properly attached. It will resist compression, tension, shear force, which would be me pushing straight down on this, and racking force, which is this. Of course, it isn't glued right now, but it's an extremely strong joint. Before we talk any more about the mortise and tenon, let's have a glossary lesson, just so we get all our terms straight. In the mortise is actually a stopped or a blind groove. There are two ends to it, and there are two sides to it. Now, this mortise goes all the way through the wood, but if it didn't, there of course would be a bottom. Woodworkers got a little bit more funky with naming the parts of a tenon. You have a top surface and a bottom surface, of course. Took no great stretch of the imagination for that. But the two sides of the tenons are called the cheeks. And this little ridge here where the tenon has been whittled down to, that is the shoulder. The top, bottom, sides, and shoulder, or cheeks and shoulder fit just like that into the sides and ends of the mortise. Now, Drew and I have created 4 different types of mortises here to show you various applications for the joint. The top one here is probably your most common type of mortise. It's called a stopped or a blind mortise. The mortise itself does not go all the way through the wood. If I were to turn this around, you would see that there is nothing but wood on the other side. The tenon, as you can see, goes here. Since it's a square piece of wood, maybe you can see that easier. The tenon goes 1 inch into an 1.5 inch piece of wood. This would be a typical tenon, say, on the apron of a table. When it fits, the tenon almost bottoms out in the mortise. Usually there's about a 64-inch clearance there to give a little room for glue. The glue, of course, if it's done correctly, squeezes out, and the cheeks are stuck to the sides of the mortise. This one is an older type of mortise. This is a through mortise. The tenon in this case goes all the way through the board. As you can see, it sticks out by about 1/8 of an inch. This gives you more gluing surface, of course, so it's going to be stronger. But the problem is you're going to see the mortise on the back side of the board. If any of you live in an older home, you'll find these a lot on the old doors because they were very, very strong types of mortises. Today, they're seeing a rebirth of the through mortise in mission or arts and crafts style furniture. Sometimes they take the tenon and they chamfer the edge just a little bit, but it's kind of decorative when it sticks out. As a matter of fact, I've made a bookcase just like that. This is the granddaddy of all knockdown furniture. You thought I was going to drop it, weren't you? You thought this was going to be a typical sawdust session, but no, it landed right in my apron pocket. Okay, this is a locked mortise and tenon. The tenon has a hole here, which is cut much the same way as the mortise. In fact, you use the mortiser to cut this square hole. When it goes through, and it's a through mortise and tenon, when it goes through, though, the hole sticks out the side. You have a little wedge here. You can also use pins or pegs, and that locks it in place. So, here we go. I'm just changing. I don't know which camera to look at. Okay, the locked mortise and the locked mortise and tenon could be you could set up a table or a set of shelves, leave it for a small amount of time, and then pop out all the pegs and take it with you. There's a trick to doing this, and I'll tell you the trick. When you're making the hole here, if you look at how it goes through, you can see, and I'll turn this around, maybe, I don't know if we can come in close enough, but you'll see that the back of the hole is about a 64th of an inch behind the width of the stock that it goes through. This is so that when you put this in and then put the wedge in place, it actually draws the piece in up to the shoulders and locks it in place. I really put some. See, that's locked in place. Now, there's two things that you should know about making these wedged mortise and tenons. First of all, the right angle for the wedge is about 10 degrees. You can make it shallower, but it's harder to hit your sweet spot on this and make the wedge come out so that it locks between the two surfaces of the mortise. As you can see here, this wedge, when I push it home, the end is flush with the surface of the mortised wood, and on the back it's flush in the same way. 10 degrees, though, is a good locking angle. If you make it too steep, like 15, 20 degrees, there's a lot of possibility that the wedge is going to pop out at some point. This will actually stick with friction. The other thing is that if you'll notice here, there is a lot of stress on the tenon right here, and if I were to push that in too hard, it would pop this out. It would split along the grain right there and right there. A bad thing, to be sure. So what a lot of woodworkers do is they drill the tenon. They just drill it up from the bottom to within maybe a quarter of an inch of the top. Insert a dowel in there. If they don't want it to be seen from the top or the bottom, the dowel will be a quarter of an inch short, and they'll put a little cherry or whatever matching wood plug in there. And so then you have a dowel whose grain runs perpendicular to the grain of the wood, and you can put quite a bit. There is a dowel in here, by the way, and you can put quite a bit of pressure on that wedge, and it will not pop out that little piece of wood at the end of the tenon. Now, finally, this is a through mortise, like this down here. When you make the through mortises, you have to make sure that you don't lock that back in place. That the wood on the back side or the front side, whichever is the exit side when you're making the mortise, you don't want that to chip out or tear out. As the mortising chisel exits the wood, it will tear out the wood in a heartbeat. There are two ways to prevent the tear out. The first and the most common is to make sure that the wood is sitting on a fresh scrap. It's got to be fresh, smooth surface to smooth surface. Each time you plunge the mortising chisel down, that will usually prevent all the tear out. There's a much simpler way, and it's kind of cheating, but it works wonders. And that is, you cut this leg here. Pretend leg is 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. If we had cut this 1 5/8 inches on one side, we then could have punched our through mortises and then planed off 1/8 of an inch, and both the exit and the entrance would have been as clean as cat's whiskers. So that's another way to do that. Finally, the mortise and tenons that we have down here is called a split mortise and tenon. Notice that when you glue the tenon into the mortise, the grains are perpendicular. In other words, here's your tenon, here's the sides of your tenon, the cheeks of your tenon, here are the sides of your mortise, and they're going to expand and contract like this, perpendicular to each other. So there'll be, as they're moving with the relative humidity, there's going to be a constant stress on the glue joint there. You can be fairly assured that most woods will maintain a glue joint if the surface area that is glued perpendicular with grains perpendicular is less than 3 inches across the grain. What that means is that the tenon, the glue, where the tenon surface, where it meets the sides of the mortise, where the cheeks meet the sides, has got to be less than 3 inches wide. If it's more than 3 inches wide, there's a possibility that the glue joint will fail at some point, that it will actually split apart. And so woodworkers split the tenons. And there are, as you can see, there are 2 separate mortises here, and the tenons fit in those 2 separate mortises. Now you'll say, well, that doesn't solve all the problems with expansion and contraction. Now what's going to happen is when this wood expands and contracts, you're going to have pressure right here between the tenons, and that is true. That's correct. You will eventually develop either some compressed fibers and then a split right here between the two tenons as this happens. But, and this is an important but, the glue joint won't let go. Okay? If you don't split the tenons, the glue joint fails. The wood remains in one piece, but the glue joint fails. If you do split the tenon, the wood develops a little split here, but the glue joint holds on. So you have to go with the lesser of 2 evils in this case. All right. I'm going to show you some things about making a mortise. We're going to make a mortise with a mortising attachment. You've seen this in some other sawdust sessions that I've done, but I'm going to show you a couple things I haven't shown you before, and then I'm going to show you a way you haven't seen yet of making a tenon. Let's bring this mortise over. Libby, watch it there. Good dog, Libby. Good dog. Okay. Come on. Lay down. Lay down. We've got this mortiser all set up here to make a joint. Let me get back on screen so you can see me. We've got this mortiser all set up to make a joint. We've got a 1/4 inch wide, 1.5 inch long mortise marked out here, and I made this, and I'll show you this, with this marking gauge. If you don't have a marking gauge and you have any amount of mortising to do it all, these are wonderful tools. They will scratch 1 or 2 parallel lines that are perfectly parallel to the surface in a matter of seconds, and they're nice and crisp, much easier to read than pencil lines. And this is an important and, they scratch the surface, break the wood fibers for you, so you get a clean entrance. Now, this is a fairly narrow board, as you can see. This is just 1 inch thick, If we were to put this on the mortiser, we would find that we could not get this close enough to the fence to actually cut a mortise in this board. If I turn this sideways, or if we come in, can we come in on camera A minute? There we go. You see the post that is behind the mortiser right here? This post will bump into the yoke that holds the mortising chisel. We've got the yoke turned so that there's the least possible interference, but it will still bump in. You can only get it up to about 3/4 of the fence. So what I'm doing here is I've taken a spacer and I'm going to space the part I want to mortise away from the fence. The spacer has perfectly flat surfaces. There we go. That's how I set it up. And now we're ready to cut the mortise. Now just to remind you. Let me get back in on camera here. Just to remind you, what we're going to do when we cut this mortise is, first of all, you cut the ends. You cut one end, then go all the way down to the other end, and then you clean out the pieces in between. And I'm going to show you something after I cut the mortise. I'm going to bring this down. Now, I'm going to set the depth of this mortise to 1 inch. In fact, I'm going to set it to about 1 1/16. There we go. A little wax. Go. 1 1/16. Okay, so if we made something that was a tenon that was 1 3/64 inch long, it should fit just exactly, and it's right between the lines and 1/4 inch. Now, here's something I wanted to show you. The sides, the insides of the mortise are not all that crisp. You can, if you want to, and the mortiser must be very, very sharp in order to do this. But you can use the mortiser. Come on. For some reason, that is not, or does not behaving like a Shopsmith key. I can't get this into the what? Yep. There we go. I'm going to take the mortising bit out of here. And now I'm just going to use this as a chisel. And you can, if you want to, it's got to be sharp, but you can slice and clean up the sides until they're very smooth. You can even do a little bit of what is called nibbling. You can nibble out, make it a little longer. This is also a handy technique if you've routed grooves and need to square the ends. You can square the ends with this technique. That considerably cleans up those grooves a little bit and will make for a better groove. Okay. I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to go on to Tenon. I got this all set up. Yeah.
You want me to
We want to shoot straight down
down the runway?
down the runways at a slight angle. Okay.
This okay here? I guess we're on Dura. Do you look good to you?
It looks fine. Okay, ready?
I never stopped.
All right. Walk in here. Okay. Come on, lady. Come on. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Oh, you're such a good dog. Okay, we're going to make a tenon, and we're going to use a tenoning jig in order to do this. But first we're going to get the saw ready. I'm going to use an ordinary table saw setup, and I've put a hollow ground planer blade in here so I get some really, really smooth cuts. The smoother the top, the bottom, and the cheeks of the tenon, the better the glue joint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to cut the depth of the shoulders. This, remember, is my mortise. I'm going to cut the shoulders just that deep, right there. Let's revolve that a little bit and see. Okay, maybe a little high. Oh, that's better. Okay, So there's the shoulders cut now. Now ordinarily I would make a test cut, but I'm not going to bore you with such things. I'm going to now set the length of the tenon. Okay, we're going to set that. That is right up against the hollow ground blade. I'll set my scale to 0 and move this over to 1 and 3/64. Right there. Okay. Actually, I've got 32 inches there, but I'm splitting the difference in between. Now, to cut the shoulders, I'm going to simply use a miter gauge. Now, please note that I do not have a top guard on this, so you've got to be extremely careful. But I couldn't use the top guard because otherwise I would end up bumping into the riving knife. So let's see. Let me make sure that I am plugged in, and I'm not. You had opposable thumbs, you could take care of that for me. Come on. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. You were on such a good balance today. Come on, sweetie. Lay down. Good dog. All right. Let's do it. Okay, let's lose the miter gauge and the fence and bring in the tenoning jig. Now, when you buy this tenoning jig, it comes with a quadrant like this so that you can actually change the angle of whatever you're cutting with it. You actually only need to do that maybe one time out of 100 when you use this. Most of the time you're going to be using the tenoning jig to cut something straight up and down. So Drew and I have just put a ordinary board, just a piece of poplar on here. The nice thing about a board like this is it can go all the way to the table, so it backs up the wood all the way to the table and helps prevent any tear out. Furthermore, as it gets chewed up, you just chop it off and drop it down. I'm going to clamp the. I'm going to clamp this in the tenoning jig. First, I'm going to grab my marking gauge. Now, when I marked the mortise, I didn't change the setup on the marking gauge. So I'm going to use the marking gauge to mark where I want to put the tenon. There we go. Clamp that in. And the first thing we're going to do is bring this over here to where it's just next to the table saw and drop this down. There we go, at that point, like there, right there, is the depth of cut we want. Now we bring this over, and right there is where a tooth that's set towards the inside is just even with that line that I just scribed. So let's cut the cheeks here. The cheeks of that. Compare this to the mortise, and we're a little wide, so let's put it back in. And we'll move this over just a hair. Shave the cheeks just a little bit. And still not enough. Okay, this is where the word cut and try came from. There we go. That's got it. Now, we need also to cut the top and bottom of the tenon. So let me take a marking knife over here and my square, and I will mark both surfaces, top and bottom. Now, this time, when I put it in, I've got to put it in like this. Yeah, that's where the marks are. Now, this is not, there's no way I can use the toggle clamp that's on here to hold it in. So I'm going to get a little help over here from a hand screw. Move this until the lines are aligned. What I'm doing, by the way, when I move and I lock this down, is I'm tightening the knob here. The knob, not only acts as push knob, it acts as a lock so that I can lock this down. And that's that. Let's see, let me come up close to this camera and show you. Okay, I'm on. That's the cue. All right. Let's see. We had a question on the mortise and tenoning about where I use the dowel. The dowel goes through the tenon right here. What's this now? Yeah. Yeah. It goes through the tenon. Okay. Let me come in a little closer to the camera here. Maybe you can see the dowel in there. That's going. Let me bring it here so it's a little more focused because the camera's focusing on my face. The dowel goes through from one side to the other. Actually, those are cherry plugs. The dowel actually ends about 1/4 of an inch on either side, and then Drew put some cherry plugs on there so that it would look continuous when we sand it down, but or wouldn't be so noticeable anyway. But those are that's where the dowel goes. That way you have some strength across this part. Now you can see, I mean, there's only 1/2 inch of wood right there. That would tear right out if I really press that wedge home. Okay, You also, let's see, we also had a question about mortising gauges, where we can get them. These two are commercial mortising gauges. This one is sold by Woodcraft. This is a nice little one. You can actually get a fairly good mortising gauge that's made by Stanley at Ace Hardware. You just have you have to special order it, but they carry them, and it's plastic. It's and surprisingly accurate. That has a little tab. This is another one that you can find around. These are made in India. They're pretty nice. This is you'll find these in a lot of woodworking catalogs. The neat thing about this one is that it has a single mortising point on one side. Here, let me put it there so Drew can come in close on it. It has a single mortising point on one side and a double scribe on the other side. See that? And that scribe you can adjust to up to from 1/4 of an inch all the way down to several inches. So you can, if I put it right there, I'm at 1/4 of an inch, and then I can move this up to say 1/2 inch from the double scribe, and then I can scribe both sides of my mortise at the same time. The best mortising gauge that I have is one that I made myself, and we should probably do a sawdust session on how to make this, because it is like super simple. It's incredibly simple. But this has one here with the double points, okay, and it has one over here with double points. These points are scribes. These points are actually blades, and then it has on this side a single point and a single blade. So you can set this up in a number of different ways for making all sorts of different cuts and mortises. It's really a nice design. Jim McCann designed this and made this a long time ago. It's in.
Okay.
Yep. There you go. There you go. There. This is. There it is. Close. Okay. This is where we have the single points and the single knife, and this is where we have the double points and the double knives. Nicely put together, really. This is in my book, Using Hand Tools. It shows you how to make this. Do we have any others on mortises and tenons here? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go. We're going to go change out the speed changer in the Mark V. I've got our cutaway Mark V ready to go here. So let's do it. Okay. Take a look here. Let's see if I can get my face close to the focus correctly. Yes. I'm going to have to back off a little bit. It has some burn marks on it because this is cherry, and cherry always burns unless all you have to do is look at it sideways. However, it's extremely clean. Nice cuts, as you'd expect from hollow ground planer blade, and the shoulders are nice and flat. There's probably just a little cleanup that I've got to do there where the cheek meets the shoulder, but other than that, it's perfect. And that, folks, is Mortise and Tenon 101. At Shopsmith's website, you'll find dozens of free videos on all kinds of woodworking projects, from preparing lumber to applying a finish. Twice a month, we webcast a 2-hour sawdust session where you can ask questions and get woodworking help right over your computer. To find out more, come visit us at shopsmith.com.